Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda. Kushaq, choose what really matters.
Hello and welcome to WION. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay, and here's a question. Do you know what's the beauty of the United Nations General Assembly? Possibilities. The possibility of meeting new people, the possibility of having great interactions, and the possibility of learning new things. Take Saint Kitts and Nevis, for example. A lot of us may not know very much about this country. It's short for Saint Christopher and Nevis. The country is named after Christopher Columbus, the explorer. He sighted Saint Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean in 1493. The islands were formed by volcanic activity, colonized by the British. And today, it stands as a constitutional monarchy with a unique diplomacy. Saint Kitts and Nevis is one of the only 14 countries to have formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. The island country is also a current favorite among Indians looking to apply for citizenship in the Caribbean. To talk to us more about this very interesting island nation, I'm being joined by Mr. Mark Brantley. He is the Premier of Nevis, and he is the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Aviation for Saint Kitts and Nevis. Mark Brantley, welcome to WION.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's interesting. Saint Kitts and Nevis, as I just told our audience, is one of the only 14 countries to still have diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And you recently said, and I'm quoting, Taiwan is not only a friend, Taiwan is our best friend. What makes Taiwan your best friend?
Well, we've had long relations with Taiwan. In fact, when my nation became independent on the 19th of September 1983, Taiwan was the very first country to recognize us and to formalize diplomatic relations with us. So we've had well over 3 decades of relations with Taiwan. And Taiwan has been there to assist us in every facet, in education, in healthcare, in our efforts at IT. So the people of Taiwan, even now, in terms of this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, have been there for us, the government and people. And so when we say that, it's because the relationship has been a consistent one and one that is mutually beneficial.
A lot of smaller island nations have switched sides. Were you not persuaded by the Chinese to do the same?
There's constant pressure. We understand the diplomatic efforts on all sides, but we feel that we have common values, shared values, with the government and people of Taiwan. We've had a long tradition, as I've explained, and we feel that it's a relationship that has borne fruit for us and that benefits our people. And so for us, it is not about the new thing on the block or who is seeking to offer something. It is about long-term partnerships. And our diplomacy has always been based on long-term partnerships, not short-term gains. And so our approach is that we have a long-term relationship with Taiwan, spanning the full period of our independence, and that relationship is an excellent one. And so that's why we've said that they're not just a friend, they've been our best friend.
And we've been tracking China for a while, and we know that the Chinese can be persuasive. What is it that's being offered or has been offered to other nations to switch sides?
Well, we understand that, of course, economic advancement, loans, investments, things of that nature have been offered. And of course, China is a very important country. It is not that we do not value relationships, but of course our small nation must make its own way in this world, and we value partnerships that we think are long-term and that are beneficial to our people. And so whatever is on offer, ultimately for us, we must make decisions that are in our own best interest.
Right. Talking about partnerships, I have some very interesting research on Saint Kitts and Nevis and India.
Yes.
The first Indians, I'm told, arrived in your country in 1861. And for Nevis, first Indians reportedly arrived in 1874. Relations between the two sides go back a long way, yet trade between the two countries has not really taken off. Last we checked, as of 2016, the bilateral trade was just about $2.36 billion. Why do you think that's the case?
I think a lot of it has to do with distance, geographic distance, and a lot of it has to do with the absence of effective transportation links, both by sea and by air. Invariably, from that part of the world, most trade has to go through sometimes 2, maybe more countries before it gets to us. And every stop, of course, adds to the cost. So transportation links globally is always a problem. And the more stops we have to make before goods and services can arrive where they need to arrive, the more difficult it becomes, the more costly it becomes. I think, however, that our relationship goes well beyond trade. I think The relationship with India is one that we cherish. I would want to go on record and allow me please to use your widely viewed platform to say thank you to the government and people of India. Prime Minister Modi was very generous. He came here at the United Nations in 2019 and had a meeting with CARICOM leaders and expressed the interest of India to work more closely with the Caribbean. Bearing in mind that, as you say, we have a very long history with India and the Indian people. Trinidad and Tobago, for example, Guyana have large Indian populations. And as a consequence, we think that the Prime Minister signaled a new approach between the Caribbean and India. And in the height of this pandemic, even as India itself was suffering the ravages of COVID-19, we were very impressed that he came forward and offered us vaccines. And those vaccines allowed us in Saint Kitts and Nevis and most of the Caribbean to commence the vaccination process. I believe it is a matter of tremendous merit and for which we congratulate Prime Minister Modi and his government and the people of India, that even as we were waiting on COVAX to deliver, the Indian government bilaterally was able to deliver vaccines to us and to our people. And so I'm here in New York today, fully vaccinated with AstraZeneca made by the Serum Institute in India. And for that, we are truly grateful, and I wanted to express that.
That's very good of you to say that. In fact, India is going to be at the forefront of providing vaccines to the world. Just recently, there has been an understanding that 1 billion doses will be made in India with support from Quad countries. How important do you think is providing vaccines, is providing healthcare support to the world at a time when the virus from China has perpetrated so much misery?
Well, it is critically important. I believe we've heard the oft-reported term that none of us is safe unless all of us are safe. The virus, being what it is clearly highly transmissible. And if there are pockets anywhere in the world, I will tell you, we are so far away from Wuhan in China that when we first heard of this virus in Wuhan, I don't think anybody in the Caribbean paid it any mind. The coronavirus, however, has touched every corner of the planet. And so it really reinforces the need for all of us to be safe. And since vaccinations now provide the best mechanism available to us to fight against this virus, then vaccine availability and vaccine parity are going to be critical. So, of course, now that India is again reopening and again offering vaccines to the rest of the world, we understood quite clearly that you had a surge there and certainly needed vaccines for your own population. But now that that surge is over and that India appears now to be doing better at home and is now offering vaccines to the rest of us, we are very grateful to see that happen. And not only in the Caribbean, but of course in other areas of the world like Africa and elsewhere, where vaccines are still critical if we are to beat this coronavirus and emerge on the other side of this pandemic.
It's not just Indian vaccines that are reaching your country, it's Indian citizens too. A lot of them are looking at Saint Kitts and Nevis as an attractive destination. Do you have an estimate of how many Indians may have applied in the past few years?
I don't have those numbers, but no matter how many have applied, we welcome more to apply. The truth is that the Indian people, of course, are not only highly educated, but we have found that they are very business-oriented. We have not just Indians applying for citizenship, we have Indians who are moving there, Indians who are engaging in some industries in our country now. You take industries like the duty-free access at our ports, it's almost predominantly now Indian. And we welcome that. We welcome the business, we welcome more investment. We would like to see Indian hotels and hospitality. Of course, the Caribbean is one of the most beautiful places in the world, and I like to say that Saint Kitts and Nevis is the most beautiful place in the Caribbean. So we certainly would welcome more investment rather than less.
And are efforts being made in that direction? Are you in conversation with certain decision makers, the government of India?
We continue to promote. I think that what we're seeking to do here at the UN and elsewhere is to formalize far more this engagement. In fact, I was very pleased to come here and speak to you today. This is a widely viewed program in the Caribbean. And the idea really would be to say to India, we exist, we are open for business, and we would hope to attract business people from India to come and do business with us.
Well, you're on the right platform, I have to say. And since you're talking about your partners, the United States is a very important partner for you, I understand. But the United States has faced a lot of criticism for not standing up with allies over the past few weeks and months, from Afghanistan to France to others. Do you think that there's a question mark on that partnership, or do you think that that is removed from what your equation with the US is?
Well, let's be fair. I think diplomacy is what it is. It ebbs and flows, and nobody gets it right all the time. and we all go through these challenges from time to time. The US has, of course, been a very important force in the world, and we in the Caribbean are the third border to the United States. They have Canada in the north, Mexico to the south, and the Caribbean. So the truth is that we have sought to develop relationships and to maintain relationships. And in my view, the United States has taken renewed interest in the Caribbean under the Biden administration. We, in fact, within the first few months of that administration, were able to meet with Secretary of State Blinken at a very high level of the US government. And so I think that these are important first steps. I think diplomacy matters. The Caribbean has a long history with the United States. You may well know that one of the founding fathers of the United States, Alexander Hamilton, was born in Nevis. And so he was the first Secretary of the Treasury, and he was born there. So that umbilical cord stretches back centuries.
So you've had a good run at the UNGA, and your country has been expanding its global footprint, and you've recently established diplomatic ties with Egypt, among others. What are your expectations from the world and world bodies like the United Nations as you expand, like I said, your footprint internationally?
Well, clearly we're a very small country. We're the smallest in the hemisphere. And the beauty of the United Nations is the beauty of multilateralism. It affords us the opportunity to engage with much larger countries, to reach out to the world and to find our way in this world. The world is increasingly hostile, I think, to many, and even more so to small countries. We have problems of climate change. We have problems of sometimes rules that are developed by others that impact us all. And I think that the United Nations affords the ultimate in terms of a multilateral forum for us to engage. And it is the only place in the world, it is the only construct in the world which will allow Egypt to sit with Saint Kitts and Nevis and to formalize diplomatic relations. It's the only construct in the world that will allow India to sit with Saint Kitts and Nevis and to formalize relations. And so we think that that is a triumph of multilateralism. And certainly here at the United Nations, we have done well in terms of engaging with partners and trying to frame the debate and the discussion in a way that is beneficial not only to Saint Kitts and Nevis, but to small island states around the world.
And you're making a lot of progress. In the last 1 year, you've established diplomatic relations with, 37 countries?
Yes.
Nevis, as you would know, has also been named in some of the biggest financial scams the world over. The allegation is that Nevis helps clients create corporations with greater anonymity than almost anywhere else on earth, from Ukraine's deposed president Viktor Yanukovych to Russian and Taiwanese officials. They've all been accused of taking stolen assets and taking them to Nevis. What are your thoughts on this? And what is your government doing to prevent such scams?
Well, what can one say? You know, you're a media personality, and we understand in the media that scandal sells. And so sometimes I think a lot of this is presented in a way to suggest that we are rogue nations, not only in Saint Kitts and Nevis, but in the Caribbean. It is unfortunate because the biggest scandals in the world aren't in little islands like Nevis. They're in the money centers of the world. So for major scandals, you must look to London, you must look to New York, you must look to Geneva. Of course, nobody says that because it's easy to pick on the little countries in the Caribbean. What we have said and continue to say is that we are a responsible member of the international community, and wherever there is criminality, fraud, or any untoward behavior, we respond accordingly. And I'm very pleased that whatever may be said of us, that in the past decade or more, we have had no such occurrences, whereas globally, we see events unfolding across the globe, which are truly global scandals. And so I am very keen not to sort of add to that narrative, which sees the Caribbean in a particular light, through a particular lens. And I get particularly offended, if I can use that term, when I see writers in places like London casting their gaze to the Caribbean, but ignoring what is happening in their own backyard. And so my sense is that all of us internationally have an obligation to fight illicit behavior, illicit financial behavior, whether it's money laundering, whether it's illicit tax activity, whatever it may be, we have a global responsibility. And I'm very pleased that Saint Kitts and Nevis is highly regulated. Saint Kitts and Nevis is monitored by organizations like the OECD and others. We engage in constant evaluation, and that it will be of interest to you, I'm sure, and your viewers, that we have the same compliance rating as the United States of America, which is largely compliant. And I believe that that speaks for itself.
Indeed, it does. And we definitely do highlight financial scandals in the big power centers of the world as well. I wanted your view on this because this is what makes news.
Sure.
Something else that Saint Kitts and Nevis makes news for is the impact that you're suffering because of climate change. How serious is the situation for countries like yours?
It is very serious. In fact, in 2017, I had the opportunity on behalf of my country to present our national address, our national statement at the United Nations. And I said then that we were, in every sense in the Caribbean, being asked to cash a check that we did not write. And what I meant by that is that we in the Caribbean are the lowest emitters. We are the smallest contributors to this problem. And yet we are the ones who face an existential threat. We have low-lying countries like the Bahamas, where a single meter rise in ocean will obliterate those countries altogether because they're low-lying countries. Most of our infrastructure and our economy is based on tourism. Where are your hotels? They're on the beach because that's what tourists want. The beaches, again, are the most vulnerable to climate change and ocean rise. Even now, as we speak, we have Hurricane Sam that is currently swirling in the Caribbean. Every year we face this risk. And what can we do? We continue to appeal to the world, to big countries such as India and other countries, that they must commit to the necessary changes to allow all of us to survive. Otherwise, we will have a serious problem of our very existence in our Caribbean civilization being wiped out entirely. So this is a major issue for us. And one of the things that we've argued is that notwithstanding the preoccupation of the world currently with COVID, we have an obligation not to put climate change on the back burner because it is absolutely critical if we are to survive.
India, I can tell you, is the only country that has met its Paris commitments. And India continues to push for effective leadership, effective action to fight climate change. That was also part of Prime Minister Modi's address at the UNGA. Do you believe that world powers in general are doing what needs to be done to counter climate change, or has it just become a talking point at global forums?
I think it's more than a talking point at this point. And the reason it's more than a talking point is that world powers are recognizing that climate change also affects them. I think before, when it affected low-lying areas, it affected small countries in the Pacific and the Caribbean, perhaps it wasn't so relevant. It has, I think, become more relevant now and more critical because we're seeing wildfires in California. We're seeing hotter summers. We're seeing, I believe in July, the hottest month ever recorded. So we're recognizing that this is a global threat now. It is no longer just something that impacts small island developing states. And as a consequence, I think nations are responding. What I think we need to do, however, is to move it beyond just the national politics. You take the United States. Under one president, they take a particular view, they withdraw from the Paris Accord. Under a second president, they re-engage. What will happen in the next 4 years under a different president? So what we need is consistency in approach. We need everybody to be singing, as we say in the Caribbean, from the same hymn sheet, in the same pew, in the same church, that climate change is an existential threat to all of us. If the people in the Caribbean can no longer live in the Caribbean, where are they going to go? The United States is the largest landmass and our closest neighbor. Do they want 10 million people flocking to the United States? I'm sure they don't. Do we want climate refugees? I'm sure we don't. So it behooves all of us to work together to solve this problem.
UNGA offers the possibility of interesting conversations, and I believe this has been one of them. Thank you very much, Mark Brantley.
And thank you for having me.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.
Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda. Kushak, choose what really matters.